know someone between 18 and 25 years old with an interest in public policy, effective civic engagement, political accountability, and Texas history, then you've got to tell them about the Texas Scorecard Fellowship. Applicants need only to demonstrate a commitment to foundational conservative principles, strong character, and a committed work ethic in order to be competitive. This fellowship does not require applicants to be enrolled in a college or university, and fellows will be paid a $2,000 monthly stipend for the duration of their fellowship. At the end of the program, the ideal participant will leave equipped with the knowledge and the skills to effectively and meaningfully communicate through multiple media formats the public policy process of the state of Texas.
Well, hello everybody, happy Friday, and thank you for joining us on The Headline. I'm Brandon Waltens, Managing Editor of Texas Scorecard, and thank you for joining us for this special edition of The Headline. It's always a special edition when we get to be joined by our publisher, Michael Quinn Sullivan, who took the time to come over, move on down, join us here on the set.
What that always means is Jeremy and Jacob and the homeless guy under 183, all these people were busy, and seriously, you folks don't believe this. Brandon goes, so Michael, I've got nothing else tomorrow.
Not what I said.
That's literally what you said, and it really hurt my feelings.
Not what I said. Actually, what I did say is that we've gotten so many questions from a lot of y'all that have been watching, a lot of folks that I've seen at a couple of events this week and last week around the state. Have been asking about this constitutional amendment election that we've got going on, talking about, okay, how am I supposed to vote? And, Texas Scorecard, we're not going to tell you how to vote, but I am interested in kind of getting your perspective on some of these propositions that are on the ballot, that are on the election. Early voting's going on right now. The election day is Tuesday, and so we'll talk about that in a moment. But first, a big story this week, really continuing on from what we've seen over the past several weeks, which has been this continued push by companies and by the federal government right now for employees to get the COVID vaccine. We've seen, airlines, we've talked about Southwest, we've talked about American Airlines, some of these big companies. And a lot of the employees right now are kind of up against the clock as they look, a lot of these people are getting notice saying, you got to get the jab by December 8th or you're out of here.
Yeah, well, and it's, and I guess there's also very dismissive, and I don't necessarily mean for it to, but one thing if you can say, oh, well, oh gosh, you have you won't have as many opportunities to go fly to Disneyland or something, or, and you kind of dismiss it. Yeah. When you think about, passenger air travel, but, you realize Union Pacific, which moves, most of the freight around Texas and into Texas and out of Texas, that kind of thing, where everyone knows about the supply chain problems we have right now, and now we're about to make that potentially worse. I was reading this morning, this is New York City, not Texas, but in New York City, they've shut down like 100 of their ambulance crews, shutting down fire because people aren't showing up to work. These firefighters, EMTs, police officers. Apparently, police and fire apparently in New York constantly kind of battle each other, and yet you've got all these firemen and police officers joining together outside the mayor's official residence, protesting the mandate. And this is happening across the country. It's just unthinkable. You're talking about a disease, Brandon, that you have a 99% survival rate from. 99% survival rate from, and yet we're about to shove potentially tens of thousands of people out of their jobs if you don't get the vaccine for a disease that there's a 99% survival rate from. It just beggars belief.
Yeah, you talk about people protesting these sorts of things in New York City, right? We see that happening in California where they've got some of these draconian mandates.
Right.
But this is happening right here in Texas, right? We've talked about Southwest Airlines, for example. We'll stick with airlines. Their CEO has said, after a lot of pressure and a lot of protests from employees, has said that, okay, if employees won't get vaxxed, we'll give them pay while we look over their exemption and whether or not we'll approve that. We're not going to fire employees, at least right now, for that. Right. But at the same time, You've got American Airlines, also based in Texas, taking a different tack, saying employees have until November 24th to get the vaccine. You've got other big airlines like Delta saying, okay, you don't have to get the vaccine, but you're going to pay $200 a month extra on your premium. Never mind that you don't really do that to anyone else with any other kind of risky behavior.
We're going to charge you $200 for not taking a vaccine because of a disease that there's 99% survival rate from. On the other hand, you can smoke, you can drink, you can sleep around, you can do all these other things that are inherently, that have like 100% impact on negative impact on health outcomes, and yet, we don't apply that same kind of penalty to them. This whole thing is just so completely wacky, out of control that we're approaching a point where reasonable people are going to do unreasonable things because of the unreasonable policies that are being pushed.
When you have some of these employees, specifically with the airlines, taking to the courts right now, right? Filing lawsuits, trying to strike down these mandates. Unfortunately, just this week we had a U.S. judge in the Northern District of Texas denying Southwest pilots who had sued the company, saying that Southwest can terminate pilots. Again, we said that right now they're saying they won't. But I think it just goes to show that this is an issue that if folks are seeking relief in the court, they're probably not going to get it. But at the same time, at least here in Texas, we're seeing absolutely no action from the legislature, largely because they're not even allowed to be here. They haven't been called down here by the governor to actually act and pass a law against this.
Yeah, and I think that this entire thing, the past year and a half, has continued to drive home to me the problem of a people who ask government to provide them safety. Safety is a very scary and elusive thing to ask government to provide you. We should be at the business of ensuring the government is securing liberty, not providing us, safety from all of life's, bumps and bruises and bustles. And when people say, "Make me safe, protect me," you end up with the federal judge in North Texas ruling in favor of Southwest Airlines, saying, well, because the airline is trying to make people safe, again, safe from a disease has a 99% recovery rate, that you can apparently justify anything. And we are literally approaching a point where that anything is about to get really dangerous if we're not careful.
Well, luckily, you've got people standing up. Like I said, we've seen protests outside these hospitals, outside these companies. We've even got up in Fort Worth, you've got Lockheed Martin employees, big federal contractor that's going to be subject to this Biden administration vaccine mandate. They've got employees that are planning a rally for medical freedom on November 3rd right outside their offices. And so I think that's the only way this is going to change, right, is if people are actually standing up and actually putting their voices out there on this stuff.
Right.
Speaking of standing up and getting their voices out there, you see a lot of parents right now in Texas standing up, going to school board meetings, making their voices heard.
Being domestic terrorists.
Yeah, exactly. As some might label them, maybe the National Association of School Boards, right? But in large part because of what they're discovering is going on in the schools. And this week we had a really, really horrific story, but it's just unfortunately one of many, where Keller ISD up in Tarrant County was found providing literally a sexually explicit graphic novel to minors in the school library.
Yeah, there's not enough mind bleach in the world for I looked at these images, saw these images from this book, and the word when you hear it's a sexually oriented book. No, this was a comic book with pictures leaving nothing to the imagination, as my grandmother would have said. It was pornography. It's pornography. And in the school district, nothing told us that there'd be this thing. Well, did no responsible adult kind of flip through it?
Nobody's looking, right?
Yeah, nobody's looking, and it beggars belief that was not the case. When in fact, what you know to be true, you know in your heart is absolutely true, is the librarian, the purchasing agent, all these people, they knew exactly what was in there, and they were okay with it. What the school district is apologizing for right now is getting caught. What they're apologizing for is, oh, we got to look like that maybe this was a mistake, and oh, shame on us for not having procedures in place. Total nonsense. And the same book, graphic novel, a comic book, in the real world, it's a comic book, is available at other school districts around the state, in the school libraries, in middle schools around the state, and we know about this one. What about the hundreds and hundreds of other titles that we don't know is in there? And I think that's where parents are, it sounds weird to say, parents have to be involved, and that's the thing, of course, that school boards and a lot of teachers and the teacher unions don't want. They don't want you involved. They don't want you seeing this stuff that they're shoving into your kid's head. Look, if you want your kid looking at child porn, then that's between you, God, and law enforcement. All right. But we're talking about school districts, pushing that, running around the parent. What we know in Keller was apparently a kid got in trouble for having told their parent about it. The kid got in trouble for having told their parent about it, and that's how this whole thing blew up. Absolutely horrific.
Absolutely horrific. And like you said, right, this is one school district in Texas. But we've seen that this happens elsewhere, right? Dallas, Austin ISD, both of them carry the book. The only reason we can see that is because their library profiles are public.
Not for long.
Yeah, not for long. They probably locked them up. And so, the question is, are parents going to be looking and seeing, okay, are these books in my library?
We saw that during the shutdowns last year, where parents, for the first time, between their own Zoom meetings, walking past their kid's room and hearing what teachers were, quote unquote, teaching in the virtual classroom, and parents being up in charge. And so you saw school districts trying to, push this, you agree not to listen in on the school the lessons, because they were, people were finding out the sheer propaganda being promoted in schools. And it's high time for parents to be far more active than ever.
Yeah, well, and a little bit of breaking news on that subject from this morning. You have State Representative Jeff Kaysen, who has written a letter to Attorney General Ken Paxton asking him to do a statewide investigation into this book. The book's called Gender Queer by I can't even pronounce the last name, Kobabe. And look, doing a statewide investigation, should there be criminal charges, honestly, for providing essentially what is child pornography in these school libraries? Absolutely horrific. We're going to be following what the Attorney General office decides to do on that matter when we find that out. Switching subjects entirely now, I talked about it at the beginning of the program. We've got the last day of early voting today. And Tuesday, November 2nd, is Election Day in this statewide constitutional amendment election. Now, just a little bit of background. The way these amendments get on there, they have to pass the House and the Senate by 2/3. Then they get put on the ballot. Voters go out and they vote yes or no. Largely, as we've seen in history, yes wins out like 90-some-odd% of the time. Just the way those things go. Texas Constitution's been amended hundreds of times.
507, according to your research. Yeah.
There you go, 507 times. We've got 8 more propositions on here, and I just kind of want to go through a few of them, and get your kind of thoughts on them, and maybe what you've heard from talking to other grassroots organizations on them. The first one is an amendment that would essentially expand the state's charitable raffle program, which we have at sporting events like baseball games and things like that, would add rodeos to that list. So not exactly a major, not like a Bill of Rights level amendment, probably.
Yeah.
But
well, one thing that it's very easy for all of us to roll our eyes at all the amendments, and you think, why in the world am I voting on this? Just kind of stepping back for a brief second. It is a good thing that in Texas, our states, the framers of our state constitution, wanted the citizens more involved in the lawmaking. That's why things that would be considered general law passed by legislatures in other states, we actually do by constitutional amendment going before the voters. We should not be afraid of self-governance. But self-governance has the responsibility of being much more informed about these things, their impact. And look, generally speaking, the right way to vote on any of these kind of things is no. I mean, I vote no.
Default position.
Default position, vote no. Calvin Coolidge once said it's more important to kill a bad law than to pass a good law. And I think that it is entirely justifiable to vote no. Just vote no. If you have any concern, if you have a little bit of confusion, if you think I don't know what I'm talking about, if you think the True Texas Project doesn't know what they're talking about, if you think that whoever you might have heard talking about this, then just vote no. Vote no. That is always the right thing to do, because we should be in the business of killing bad laws. We have too many laws, too many opportunities for people to get arrested, people to run afoul of the law because we have too many laws. Proposition 1 falls in this category, Brandon, of the mess that we have made with corporate welfare, the mess that we have made with the picking of winners and losers out there. And so we give these sports teams, we give these sporting events, we give them gazillions of taxpayer dollars, and then to justify why it is taxpayers pay for Jerry Jones's football stadium, why taxpayers pay for racing tracks and everything else. Oh, but look, they give back to the community. Those corporations, they give back to the community, and these charitable organizations that they do raffles to raise money for. So that way, actually, Jerry Jones and all these other cats aren't out any cash to speak of. They're using your cash to then say that they are charitable. It's a scam. It's a Ponzi scheme. I vote no on all these things because I don't like the gamemanship that some libertarian types will say, oh gosh, this is getting exclusive and legalized gambling. No, this is cronyism. Because if you wanted to do charitable raffles, you would say anyone in Texas can do a charitable raffle, and then you find out someone's screwing around and profiting off of it, and then you charge them with law. No, this is, again, picking little winners and losers, people who are connected politically, getting their state rep to pass a law to help them, that kind of thing. We should be opposed to that. Either allow charitable raffles for everyone, or stop this picking and choosing. So I'm a happy no on that.
Happy no on that one, okay. Proposition 2, this is one that I've seen a lot of opposition from.
Easy no.
This is a proposition dealing with some of the kind of buzzwords in there. It's transportation, infrastructure, and blighted areas. But this is actually not the first time that this amendment has been presented on a ballot, and it was voted down before. What's different this time?
Well, you see, last time the legislature made the mistake of being honest. Don't be honest is apparently the lesson the legislature took from this ballot question being defeated a few years ago. Because the legislature, when they put it before the public a few years ago, they were honest and said, this proposition could lead to higher property taxes. And we went, oh, higher taxes, I'm voting no. Because that's what this does. It creates new debt. It allows counties to create new debt. How does that debt get paid for? It gets paid for by you and me. Not only is it the debt, the principal that you and I are on the hook for, it's the principal plus the interest, which in many cases is 25, 30, 50, 55, 60% above where that number was. And if your camera shook, that is because my co-host Freddie's tail just hit the camera stand. Poor Luke back behind the camera is rushing to stop Freddie. Sorry about that, everyone. That's happened when I let my dog in the studio. But Proposition 2, absolutely. If you want higher property taxes, if you think your property taxes, you still have some bandwidth to pay more in property taxes, you should absolutely vote yes. On the other hand, if you feel like that you've got too many people taking cash out of your property through property taxes, you should probably vote no.
It's also important to know this is the only amendment that the Republican Party of Texas has actually officially come out and opposed.
Right.
And so interesting note on that one. Proposition 3 is one that's getting a lot of attention. This is a proposition that would limit the government's, or prevent rather, government from closing down churches, which is something that we saw happen last year, right? A lot of churches were forced to close on Easter because the governor and local officials closed it down.
I voted yes on this, already voted. I voted yes on this, but I voted yes with a lot of spite in my heart, and that's something I'm going to have to deal with, because we already have a constitutional amendment that says that all Texans are allowed to go worship and participate in religious services, and the governor and the Supreme Court of Texas and the legislature all ignored that last year. And so, hey, the solution to them ignoring what was already in the state constitution is another constitutional amendment that no doubt the next time it's convenient, they'll ignore this one too. I voted for it because I'm always for religious liberty, but yet I voted for it with not a lot of good feelings in my heart when I voted for it.
Okay. The next two, Proposition 4 and Proposition 5, have to do with eligibility, essentially, have to do with judicial offices. Proposition 4 dealing with judicial office eligibility requirements, making it so you have to be a lawyer longer, essentially be practicing longer to hold some different offices.
Apparently, the way you know someone's a good judge or not, will be a good judge, is how many years they've spent chasing ambulances and overbilling clients.
Yeah.
That is, that's what lawyers and judges want to limit who you can pick as a judge in Texas. If you want someone who barely graduated from junior high as a judge, you should be allowed. The citizen should be allowed to be the first judge. I hate all these restrictions on these professional requirements and stuff in these offices. We citizens need to make good choices. You can find the first 100 names, randomly pick someone from the first 100 names of the phone book, and you'll probably find someone with more moral discretion than a lot of the people graduating from law school these days. So to say that you need to go chase an ambulance for 10 years before you can be a judge, I think is just silly. Maybe you as a voter and I as a voter will say, oh gosh, I really want to have more, I want to make sure you have a good legal experience, and in fact, in your personal judgment, we shouldn't put this in the Constitution.
Proposition 5 also dealing with judicial candidates, specifically allowing the State Commission on Judicial Conduct to investigate candidates for offices and not just incumbents.
This is incumbent protection racket. Incumbents don't like that they're under the thumb of both the Texas Ethics Commission and Judicial Conduct Commission. Candidates are only under the thumb of the TEC, so incumbents saying, oh gosh, rather than free ourselves, we're going to impose more mandates on other people. Again, I voted no, not passionate about it, but I think it's one of those silly, it's a silly incumbents protection racket. Because remember that in Judicial Conduct Commission, who's it run by? It's run by incumbent judges. Incumbent judges run the Judicial Conduct Commission. So as a result, good luck being, a challenger who, all those kind of things.
Yeah, it's easy to imagine such a mechanism being used against some conservative challenger who wants to upset the establishment. Proposition 6 is one that has really come about, similar to the Proposition 3, which dealt with closing churches. This is also in response to what happened last year during the shutdowns, which is allowing constitutionally at least one designated essential caregiver for people who are in nursing homes, state living facilities, etc. I mean, I can't tell you, Michael, how many people, especially last year, that I've heard just absolutely heartbreaking stories from people who had loved ones they weren't able to see, weren't able to visit for months on end.
People dying alone in nursing homes. Yeah,
absolutely. And again, I think just like Proposition 3, which says, we can't close churches, I think on this one, it's at first it's just sad that this even needs to be laid out.
Yeah, this is one of those I'm actually less negative toward this. I voted for 3, as I admitted, with a lot of spite in my heart. This one I'm actually for. Nothing in our Constitution insured nursing home residents. I mean, who would have ever thought that you would need government's permission to go visit your sick and dying mother in the nursing home. Who would have thought that anyone would be so evil and callous to deny you the right to go visit your mom in the nursing home? Oh, well, it turns out, we've got 182 of people who are that callous in running the state. And so putting this constitutional amendment in there, look, a lot of our friends that didn't go far enough thought and say, oh, this is horrible that we're doing this. On the other hand, no one ever thought you needed to tell governments that people have a right to be with their family in these situations. So at least it's something. It's something.
There you go. And these last two, Proposition 7 and Proposition 8, are both essentially property tax carve-outs, homestead tax limits. One is for surviving spouses of disabled. The other is for surviving military spouses. This one, I've heard arguments kind of either way on that.
No, look, you can't be against property tax relief for the surviving spouse of a disabled military veteran. You can't be against that. I would just note, though, that every time we do these little carve-outs, the legislature does these for very snide, self-serving reasons. They do them because nothing would be more emblematic of the problem with our unreformed property tax system, than the widow of a Purple Heart recipient, the widow of someone who served our country and earned the Distinguished Service Medal, all those kind of things. Being kicked out of their home and going on TV talking about being kicked out of their home by the school district because they couldn't afford their property taxes. And so the politicians want to take those kind of sympathetic victims off the table to give them an excuse, to give them, buy a few more years of our Texas House, Texas Senate governor and lieutenant governor not addressing the problem of property taxes in Texas. Don't think that these two amendments are about anything other than politicians protecting themselves from their own cowardice. That's what these two propositions are. They're about taking people who could be who could be sympathetic victims of the property tax system and kind of taking them off of the playing field. I vote for them, vote against them, but don't think you're doing anything other than allowing this horrible property tax system to be unreformed for everyone.
Excellent. And again, we've got all those up, essentially a summary of what you just said on all those 8 propositions up at TexasScorecard.com. You can check that out. Michael, thanks for gracing us with your presence this morning.
Wow. Well, me and the festive holiday.
Right?
This is really,
did we notice that?
This
Do
is
we
very
like
nice. This is all your idea, I understand. This is really very festive.
I can be creative. People would be surprised. Real quick before we get into some of the show here, I want to mention earlier we had the chance to go to the very first gubernatorial forum that we've seen between the 3 challengers, Chad Prather, Don Huffines, Alan West, all challenging Greg Abbott, who, surprise, was invited but didn't come. Got the chance to see a lot of y'all out there, so it was really great to see you. We've got a summary of that event up, but I also encourage you to check out our Uncut gubernatorial interviews. We sat down for about 30 minutes, which each of the 3 candidates, again, Governor Greg Abbott did not accept the invitation to sit down, but Chad Prather, Don Huffines, Alan West did. And we've got those up at TexasScorecard.com, YouTube, Facebook. If you want to listen to them in the car, we've got them wherever you listen to podcasts, so be sure to check those out. And some quick housekeeping stuff. Conservative Leader Awards are on December 4th in Irving, Texas. If you haven't gotten your tickets yet, you're going to want to get them, okay? This is going to be a really, really fun event where, surprise, we honor citizens, not politicians, like I think just about every other political event you might see. It's a lot of fun. You get to meet a lot of folks, and so hope you get your tickets to that, and I get to see you there in December. And also want to let folks know that we're still accepting applications for spring, summer, and fall of 2022 for our Texas Scorecard Fellowship. If you or somebody you know, ages 18 to 25, are interested in coming down here and working with us for a bit of time, please be sure to send along that application. That's at TexasScorecard.com/fellowship, and we'll have the link down there in the comments if you're watching live right now. I want to thank everybody for watching. I see Steph and Tiffany, of course, tuning in from Deer Park. Joy watching from New Braunfels. Tara watching, tuning in from Bedford. If you're watching this later, you have any questions about anything we've been talking about, please feel free to drop your questions in the comments, reach out to us. But for now, thank you for joining. Have a great weekend. Be sure to check out TexasScorecard.com and subscribe to our email list. You can also listen to this show and other shows on whatever podcast platform you use. Subscribe and review our show now to ensure other Texans can be informed.